Hello and good evening. Hope you're ready for some more OCD training. Now, as you can see, I have my 3 therapy dogs with me. Although they're slightly less enthusiastic tonight about this. I think they're getting bored. But you know what? That's not my problem because they're therapy dogs, so they have to be here, regardless of whatever they may think. So, with introductions done, shall we get on with the book? Let's see. That's better. Let's get this in. Actually, let's get this in a bit closer, shall we? There we go, that's better. Okay. Let's go. Chapter 6. See? This is how I know we're getting closer. Chapter 6. Breaking free from OCD. This chapter continues our case studies of the most common forms of OCD and guides you through specific examples of how to break free from those problems. It builds on what you have learned in the last chapter about defining the problem in a completely different way, and will show you in detail how seeing and treating OCD for what it is will help you move forward. We also discuss some of the common difficulties encountered in doing this and how you can overcome them. Letting thoughts go. For most forms of OCD, the idea of letting thoughts go is a useful one. As we have discussed in earlier chapters, in OCD it is not the thoughts themselves that are the problem. When breaking free from OCD, treat thoughts as treat thoughts as thoughts. Do you understand that? What it means is, your thought is just that. It's literally just a thought. It's not, it's not something that could happen, not something that will happen. Rather, it's just a thought. It's just something that's popped in your head. That's it. You need to treat these thoughts as thoughts, not as danger signals, premonitions, or signs that you are a bad person. No examples below will demonstrate how important it is to ignore or disregard the thoughts when you are challenging the problem. Remember the unwelcome guest at the party on page 161? I do. When you have a nagging doubt such as did I leave the door open, it can be useful to think, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Now it's funny enough, when I get my thoughts, the thought that says did you lock the front door, I have another thought that says yes, you did lock the front door, Jim. You always lock the front door. You can't remember the last time you actually went out and didn't lock the front door. But then the voice says, but what if you didn't? Even though I remember myself doing it, my thoughts trick me into thinking that I didn't actually do it, or they get me to question what I do, It's like an interrogation, sort of, when you get someone. I've heard about people doing this. Certain law enforcement agencies, I won't name any, but apparently it's like what they do is they get someone who they're convinced has done this crime, and they'll ask them again and again and again, and they'll ask them in different ways. It won't just be did you do the thing, or did you not do the thing, and they just do that again and again and again, and each in a different way. What happens is your brain will eventually say, hang on a second, maybe I did do the thing they think I've done. Maybe I just convinced myself that I didn't do it because, I'm an idiot and I do stupid things. So maybe I did do this thing they think I've done. I need to get more comfy. That's better. Now, in case you're wondering why did I not cut that bit? It's because I want you to see me unfiltered, almost. This is me, okay? I make mistakes, I will lose myself, and occasionally I want to get more comfy in what I do it. So you will see moments where I drop my phone and occasionally itch myself, because that's who I am. I want to present me as me, I don't want to make it slick and edited where you don't see me scratch or get comfy or anything, because then it makes me look perfect and I don't really look like I don't have the problem. It's almost like the version of me I'd like to present on a date, as opposed to the real thing. I hope that clears it up. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, I remember now. Excuse me. Excuse me. When you have a nagging doubt, yes, I know I started this thing, but I'm going to start over again because it's easier. Such as, did I leave the door open? It can be useful to think, maybe I did, or maybe I didn't. By doing this, you are disengaging from the obsessional thought. Watch out for getting into a mental argument or for reassuring yourself, i.e., I did lock the door, it's fine. I did that at the end. The idea of it's fine being that definite is me. That's why sometimes I'll say, Jim, you did lock the freaking door, now just carry on with your damn day and don't turn around. And then you know what, people? I still turn around. I remember once years ago I was at work. And this was about 1:30 in the morning. We had a midnight start that night. And this thought says to me, you didn't lock the front door, Jim. You better go check it. And as we weren't doing anything, I quickly nipped out, drove home, checked the front door. Spoiler alert, it was locked. And I went back to work. No one noticed I was gone. Not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, really. But I don't have that. I don't work there anymore anyway. I'm going to read this sentence again, people, because I went on a bit of a tangent. Watch out for getting into a mental argument or for reassuring yourself, i.e., I did lock the door, it's fine. This might make you feel less anxious for a short while, but as you know, you only have to reassure yourself or argue with yourself more. That is very true. Breaking free from checking. It's me. In previous chapters, we looked in detail at the processes and reactions that keep a checking problem going. We considered the problem as one of many vicious circles operating at the same time, which fuel a sense of danger, otherwise known as Theory A. We have been looking at the example of Jennifer, who began to engage in a number of behaviours that fueled her central belief that she was a potential danger. The more that she bought into this idea and acted accordingly, the worse and more severe her checking problem and belief in Theory A became. Although not clear to her when she was in the grip of her OCD, what she was doing was like trying to put out a fire by throwing petrol on it. It was suggested to Jennifer that there was an alternative way of thinking about her problem, that her real problem was one of extreme anxiety about danger. Theory B. And that her measures to try to manage her danger had actually served to make her anxiety worse. Now, this pretty much comes back to what we've discussed before. The little things you do, or I do, and maybe you do if you have OCD as well, is that you will engage in Theory A and you'll occasionally say, it's fine, Jim, just leave it, to reassure yourself, which will reassure you in the moment. But as time moves on, you will go back to exactly the way you were. So, Theory A will intentionally make you worse. As I said, it's like throwing fuel on a fire. Now, where was I? Here we go. Here we have a table for Theory A and Theory B. Now I'm going to read these, okay, so you don't need to pay too much attention to these. Alright, this picture, okay? Theory A says, problems that household appliances could catch fire and burn down the house. Evidence, this has happened before in a student flat. So if this is true, what do I need to do? I need to check all the appliances to make sure they're safe. I need to remember how I checked. I need to get other people to check as well. I need to get rid of any household appliances and never go out ever again. So what does this say about my future? I will need to do more and more checking. This will take over my life. I will have no life. I will be an anxious mess because I can never be completely certain I have eliminated all the danger. And that is how Theory A will make you worse and worse over time, despite making you feel better in the moment. Excuse me, my itches. Normally it's just my face that itches when I do these videos. It's weird. Now, right, let's get this right. There you go. Theory B is what we're going to deal with here. Theory B is a problem with worry about household appliances catching fire and burning down the house, which is the same. That's for you. Evidence. I don't actually know what caused the fire I read about. I haven't heard this happening to anyone, so it must be very rare. That's like being struck by lightning or winning the lottery. Evidence. I've often worried about things in the past, but I could rely on others checking for me, so it didn't become such a problem. Nobody else is doing these checks. Perhaps I just worry more than others about it. Everyone else says I do. So if this is true, what do I need to do? I don't need to check more than once. I need to face up to the worry, and I need to challenge the thoughts head on. So what does this say about my future? It says that I should be less anxious, and that I can actually go out again. I can live my life and have fun instead of becoming a checkaholic. It's a word I just made up on the spot, actually. I'm quite proud of that. So, Theory A creates a careless person, but Theory B creates a careful and caring person. Do you understand? I hope you do. Now, Jennifer was excited by the possibility that there was another way of thinking and going about things that was very different to the OCD way she was so familiar with. A large part of her could see how compelling the case was for Theory B, particularly when she had to consider the evidence for both and could not really come up with much for Theory A. However, like most people with OCD, Jennifer was a very logical and intelligent person. She already knew that her problem was excessive, but felt so locked into the behaviours that it was very difficult to just stop them, particularly when she felt very anxious, which was much of the time. If you have a checking problem, understanding the problem provides an important basis to doing things differently. It may not be a case of just stopping, but testing out whether Theory B is a better fit for the difficulties you're experiencing and building up evidence for Theory B by testing things out. As described on page 156, it is much easier to give up a threatening idea when we have begun to see how the alternative way of thinking would work. Even better if we have also begun to gather evidence for the less threatening alternative. Now, I'm going to quickly go back to 156. So, this is when we started talking about taking the risk. And I'll quickly read out the bullet points on page 156. You need to start living your life according to Theory B. Change your belief that you are responsible for preventing something bad happening, i.e. challenge Theory A. Don't avoid stuff. You need to stop all your safety-seeking behaviours, and you need to start finding out how the world really works. Now we're going to head back to where we were. In treatment, we do ask people to stop checking and undertake behavioural experiments to find out what happens when they don't check. More than simply writing out your anxiety in the fear situation, you will also be testing out particular beliefs that you are responsible for harm by seeing what happens when you don't check. We always acknowledge that there is a risk that something bad will happen if you don't check, but the guarantee with continued checking is that OCD will always remain a problem. So where do we start? People with checking OCD will often say, it's normal to check a bit, so where do I start? It is a good idea to start with not checking at all in order to find out what happens. After this, you can continue doing things in an anti-obsessional way to build up as much evidence as possible as to what happens when you don't do what OCD tells you. You can decide what rules you would like to live your life by once the OCD is gone. Remember that because of the way OCD works, it plays on a very broad sense of responsibility to drive the problem, so it is likely that you'll feel uncomfortable when you start to do things differently. You may think of how many catastrophes and how it is your job to prevent them. However, what you may not know is if you don't act in an obsessional way, what happens next. When you set up your own behavioural experiments, think about what the OCD is telling you will happen if you don't do what it says. Write down specific predictions and how much you believe them. Include in this column your prediction about how intense the anxiety will get from 0 to 100% and how long the anxiety will last. Well, I'm not going to do that today. What we are going to do is read about Jennifer's behavioural experiment. So, planned behavioural experiment. Leave the house without checking and stay out of the house. So for Jennifer, this is going to be really, really difficult. Specific predictions and how much you believe them. The belief that something will catch fire is 80%. The belief that I will get anxious is 100%, because I know I will freak out and run down the road. It will last I can't until I go back and check that everything is okay, which is 90% belief. So after the experiment, did Jennifer's predictions come true? No. Conclusions. I think that things are more unsafe than they really are, which is very true. But does this fit best with theory A, theory B? Fits best with theory B. It is possible that for you, it may take a few goes to build up to leaving the house without checking at all. You don't need to worry about this. Recognise that this is very normal if you have been in the habit of checking excessively for some time. Any reduction in checking is good and is an achievement. However, you need to test out theory B as much as possible and continue to progress towards the clearest experiment. In this case, not checking at all and leaving the house. But don't stop here. Once you have psychic and OCD out of your life, if you possibly can, really go for it. For Jennifer, this would be repeating this experiment, going out for longer, doing it at different times and in different moods. There are several reasons why this is a good idea. 1. Building up evidence for theory B. It isn't just a fluke that Jennifer's house didn't burn down. She wasn't lucky this time. She took a risk and found out how the world really works. 2. Reclaiming your life. OCD has held you back and taken things from you. Take pride in standing up to the problem and being free to do what you want to do. You do not need to live in OCD's dictatorship, where there is a ban on socialising. Do what you like and go out when and where you please. Protect yourself against future wobbles. If you have a bad day in the future, then you can think back and remember that you did all these fantastic things to overcome your problem. There will be more of this in chapter 9, but we're only in chapter 6 so far, people. Chapter 9 is titled Life After OCD. Once you have done this experiment, you'll need to do it again. The more times you have experienced the reality of what happens, the more evidence you'll have stored to answer the intrusive doubts and thoughts that the OCD may throw off at you. Remember the anxiety extinction curve in the last chapter? Or do you? When people repeat the experiments, their predictions and/or beliefs, and their predictions often change. In parallel with this, the intensity of the anxiety they experience in the situation does not usually get as high and goes down more quickly. But please don't take our word for it. It is very useful to keep your own information on this by filling out the record sheets, as it is often very hard to remember exactly what we thought and felt in the past. That is very true. It's one of the reasons I started this vlog. If you find the anxiety is not subsiding as predicted by theory B, have a look at the troubleshooting section on page 180. I'm not going to go there yet because I've just finished page 177, so. But we'll stop the video before we get to that and we'll do that in the next video. Doing things the anti-obsessional way. The key to breaking free as quickly and as thoroughly as possible is to do things in an anti-obsessional way. This could mean not checking at all and going out for a long time, or practicing letting the thoughts go when you get them. Maybe I locked the door. Maybe I didn't. Tackling behaviours and beliefs that keep a check-in problem going. Earlier we identified some of the common behaviours and beliefs that keep a check-in problem going. You'll see how standing up to the OCD and not checking can challenge each one, and often several at the same time. So we have a little chart here, which I'm going to go through. So, safety-seeking behaviour. Checking things repeatedly. How does it keep the problem going? It keeps the focus on danger and increases doubt undermines confidence in one's memory. It also keeps you feeling anxious. So what do? You don't check. You rate your belief in danger, you rate your anxiety, you rate the confidence in your memory over several experiments. Safety-seeking behaviour, asking for reassurance. How does that keep the problem going? Because reassurance is a form of checking. It makes you feel less certain as you'll always be able to pick holes in someone's answer. So what do you do about it? You don't ask. But you rate your belief in the danger, you rate your belief in you rate your anxiety, and you rate the confidence in your own memory. Another safety-seeking behaviour, avoidance. Avoidance means that the beliefs remain unchallenged. For example, I cannot leave the house without checking. So what do you do about it? You don't check. You have to rate your belief in your danger and you have to rate your anxiety. Now we're on to anxiety-related beliefs. So let's read the first one. Once I thought that something could go on fire, it would be irresponsible not to check. Yeah, that's a fair statement. But how does that keep the problem going? That is because the check is to be focused on the danger. If you are checking, you have more and more thoughts about danger. If you have to act on each one, you'll soon find yourself doing lots more checking. Thinking about more and more danger. Doing more checking. So what do you do about that? You don't check. You rate the belief in your danger and you rate your anxiety. Anxiety-related belief. I have a very poor memory. How does it keep the problem going? Because research shows that people with OCD do not have worse memories than others. However, doing lots of checking makes people less confident in their memory, a problem that they solve by doing more checking. So what do? You don't check. You rate the confidence in memory over several experiments. I can't stop checking until I feel certain that things are safe. But it's worth noting that things are not a good way to make decisions like this. Checking makes you feel anxious, and anxiety makes you doubt and feel uncertain. Therefore, it's easy to get stuck in the loop of trying to feel certain by checking, which makes you feel less certain, and that leads you to checking more. So what do? You don't check. You rate the belief in your danger you feel, and you also rate the anxiety that you currently feel too. Last one. Nothing bad has happened. The checking is working to keep me and others safe. But this is a very seductive logic. Perhaps the checking has nothing to do with the fact that nothing bad has happened. What to do? Don't check. You rate the belief in danger and you rate your anxiety. And that, people, is all for tonight. Next time, if you join me, we'll be tackling troubleshooting, as we mentioned before on page 177. Now, that's it for me tonight. I hope you've learned something from this, and I hope you are generally improving as people. So it's good night from me. It's good night for my 3 therapy dogs. My unenthusiastic therapy dogs, I should add. So, good night. Bye.